Good evening. Thank you for joining us here. This is your announcement to make a last chance dash for pizza to bring back to your chair. Otherwise, for those of you who were here last time, we started a little bit after so people would have a chance to eat. We've got a lot of program to get through tonight, so we thought we'd start a little bit earlier. But please, if you haven't done it yet, or now or later in the evening, go ahead and help yourself to a piece of pizza and a beverage. My name is Lori Alayan. I'm city manager for the city of Palm Desert, and I'm here to welcome all of you here this evening for our second community forum to talk about district voting and changes that will be coming soon to the city of Palm Desert. Before I start, I'd like to introduce some of our key team members. In red over here, we have Sylvia Paz. Sylvia's with Alianza. Next to her is Doug Johnson. Tell me if I'm getting feedback. Is Doug Johnson? Doug is our demographer extraordinaire. He's with DMC, and he'll be telling you more about his firm when we turn over the mic to him. And Ryder Smith. Ryder's with Pepe Smith. Sylvia and Ryder are consultants to the city. They are helping us to get the word out to all of the constituents, to all interests and all corners of the city so that we make sure we reach everyone with our outreach program. The purpose of tonight's meeting is we want to talk some more about the CVRA, which is the California Voting Rights Act. And we want to talk tonight about a new concept, which is communities of interest, which we didn't talk about last time. Our goals tonight are, first of all, to increase everyone's understanding about the California Voting Rights Act, and we want to talk about how the boundaries of districts are formed, how they're created, how you get to have input into that process. We also want to start to identify the communities of interest because those will go into the formation of boundaries, and Doug will lead you through information and an exercise on how to have input into that. Let me talk a little bit about how we got here tonight. The CVRA was introduced and was passed a number of years ago in the state of California, and the city of Palm Desert found itself with a legal challenge to our at-large voting, which we've had in the past. A complaint and a suit were filed against the city in June of last year. We went ahead and negotiated through attorneys with the plaintiffs for a period of time, and by December we reached a joint settlement agreement. The city council approved the agreement, and its concepts are twofold. One is that we will create 2 districts in the city, one of which will be in our downtown district where we have a higher concentration of a minority population, in this case Latinos. And secondly, the implementation of ranked choice voting is required as part of the terms of the settlement. That is something that we will be talking about more in the future. I want to talk a little bit about what we did at our last meeting, which is our first general forum. Just for background, we talked about a number of things. We learned some lessons, and I appreciate the feedback we received. Some of the things that are different tonight is you'll see that we have better sound attenuation. We hope that people are going to be able to communicate better. We have smaller tables, so you don't have to yell at somebody across the way. We've installed carpeting for the first time ever in this room. We have drapes up for the sound. We hope that that will facilitate the communication. But as we go through and look at what we learned from last time, there were 3 outstanding questions that we want to make sure that we address. The first was, why did the city settle? In short, the city settled to avoid costly litigation. Doug will have information about the cities that have chosen differently and who have spent a lot of money, and I mean millions of dollars going down a road that was ultimately not productive. And secondly, this gave us, by settling it, gave us the opportunity to introduce a novel concept that we don't know of anywhere else in the state, and that is the 2-district solution. The two district solution focuses our downtown area and the areas around Civic Center Park where we have the greatest concentration of Latinos, and yet it leaves on the perimeter a larger district which continues in the tradition Palm Desert has embraced for over 50 years of unity and community and working together. In answer to the questions, the second question that we got most of is why 2 districts rather than 5? Again, this settles the districting question by addressing both the letter and the intent and the spirit of the California Voting Rights Act. It protects our voters in the center of the city, as well as keeping intact to the greatest extent possible that which has served Palm Desert so well. Palm Desert has flourished with all of its council members working in unison towards goals that serve the whole of the city. This solution, this settlement preserves to the greatest extent possible both of those and listening to all constituents within the city. This is just a map that we'll be seeing more of. It illustrates what I mean when I say that the greatest concentration of minorities, which are a protected class, the Latinos, is in only one area of the city. It is not distributed throughout the city. Therefore, we're able to propose a solution that is unlike that which has been employed otherwise. It gives a voice to all Palm Desert communities, those in the minority protected class and those in the greater circumference around them. And finally, the last question we heard a lot of was, what does the law say, who decides? Who decides on the districts? The answer is the law says that the city council members need to decide. This is not something that goes to public vote through a referendum. In those communities that have tried that approach, the courts have ultimately overturned their solutions. Therefore, the decision will be made by the 5 people you see up here. They are your elected members of the city council. And with that said, what I would like to do is turn this over to Sylvia, who is going to describe a little bit more of how the evening will proceed, and then we'll leave it up to Doug.
Thank you. Thank you, Lori. So you all have an agenda in front of you. It's up on the screen. Again, the majority of this meeting is focusing on a question that we heard loud and clear during the last open house, which was wanting more information around the California Voting Rights Act and the process for districting. So Doug will have a presentation. After his presentation, very similar to last time if you were here, is you're going to be having some time to ask any questions that come to mind, writing them on the Post-its, and using the question boards. We have a question board on each side of the room. So there's going to be table discussions. After the table discussions, both Doug and Lori will be spending about 15 minutes answering any of the questions that are on the board. So at any time during your discussion, feel free to write them down, and someone from your table can take the questions over. After Lori and Doug respond to the questions, you can choose at that time if you feel that you've gotten all the information you need to leave, or you can choose to stay, as Doug will be doing a software demo that will show how the district boundaries will be drawn in the city of Palm Desert with a short map drawing exercise. And that will conclude today's meeting. So with that, we talked about ground rules or community agreements last time, so I won't review them. Just a reminder, the question boards are there for your use. And Doug Johnson, we'll pass it over to you.
Thank you. And thank you. It's great to see everybody out here. I do these all over the state, and often there are 2 people in the audience. So congrats to the city for getting the word out, and to all of you for showing up. So as was mentioned, national demographics, we've been doing this a lot. Justin Levitt, who's my vice president, will also be at some of these forums and tomorrow night's council hearing. We did Desert Healthcare District. We did Palm Springs, Cathedral City. So we've spent a lot of time out here in Coachella Valley. Where are we? Oops, let me go back to the beginning, sorry. There we go. So as was just mentioned, what we're talking about is your election system. Historically you've been at large, where if there's 2 seats up, everybody runs, you choose your 2 favorite candidates, and the top 2 vote getters win, wherever they're from. If there's 3 seats up, you vote for top 3. That's what the overwhelming, over 95% of California cities 20 years ago had that system. And that's really what the California Voting Rights Act has been enacted to push jurisdictions away from. And so there are a couple jurisdictions that have something called from district or residence districts. Newport Beach is probably the closest one to this, to here. There you had districts, and the candidates had to live in a district, but the vote was still citywide. So there's been a lot of interest in that as a middle-of-the-road option, except the state said it's not a middle-of-the-road option. It is at large. You get sued under that just like you get sued under having an at-large system, unfortunately. Which brings us to by district, or in your case, kind of this hybrid system of 2 districts. And this is where the candidates who want to run to represent a given district have to live in that district, and only the voters in that district will vote for that seat. So that very big picture election systems. As you no doubt are familiar if you're here at this meeting, this is all driven by the California Voting Rights Act. Very briefly, what California Voting Rights Act did is it builds off the Federal Voting Rights Act. You know, we've all heard of it, passed in 1965. It's been around a long time. It's very clear in what the, well, relatively clear on what the rules for the federal law are. A couple of jurisdictions got sued by the feds or by people using the Federal Voting Rights Act in California in the 90s, and the jurisdictions defeated the challenges. So groups went to the legislature, and in 2001 passed the California Voting Rights Act. And really, I won't go into all the details, but under the federal law, there are 4 tests. And you have to fail all 4 tests before you have to switch to district elections. The California law got rid of 2 of those. So now there's just 2 tests, and it's just a statistical analysis. There's no need for plaintiffs to show any kind of discrimination, prejudice, anything like that. It's simply a statistical analysis. So that's made it very, very easy for plaintiffs to win these cases. And so what's happened is what we call a quiet tsunami has swept California. Before the act was in place, there were 29 cities. Of the almost 500, 29 of them had district elections. Now we're at almost 160. So essentially in 13 years, we've had almost 130 cities switch their election systems. In addition to that, 215 school districts, 34 community college districts. You see 1 county board of supervisors because the other 57 were already by district. So San Mateo was the last holdout, they got sued. Nope. So, and now we're seeing more and more of the special district, fire districts, hospital districts, airport districts. These challenges are being brought at all different levels. And what's driving it is not that these 400 or 500 jurisdictions are violating anyone's voting rights or acting in a prejudicial manner. What's driving the massive change is the dollar figures. As the city manager mentioned, jurisdictions that fight this have all lost, and they paid huge fees. We used to talk about Palmdale as $4.7 million plus $2 million spent, almost $2 million spent on their own defense. Blew people's minds. You know, $6 million in a fight over an election system. Well, now Santa Monica has put that to shame. Santa Monica has spent, they won't say exactly how much, but they've spent between $7 and $8 million on their defense, and they lost in trial court, and the plaintiffs have asked for $22 million in fees. So now the judge has not awarded it, everything's on appeal there, but essentially if you want to fight this in court, you need to have $5 to $10 million to spend with no chance of getting it back and be ready to absorb $5 to $20 million in fees. So that's why so many jurisdictions are switching when the challenges come. And I mentioned this is sweeping the state, in particular sweeping the Inland Empire. You can see the greens were the cities that were by district before the California Voting Rights Act. So, you know, no surprise, the big ones. San Bernardino, Riverside, Menifee, and Moreno Valley. The blue ones are all cities that have switched elections because of California Voting Rights Act challenges. So you can see all the blue, you know, from out here in Indio, 29 Palms, all around. It's just swept through the Inland Empire. The red ones are the ones that are facing challenges right now that have not yet decided what they're going to do. So you can really see, this is not a Palm Desert specific thing. This is definitely sweeping the state and sweeping this region. So the process, the state sets forth the process. We have to have 2 initial hearings, council hearings, to kind of inform and educate and get input from you on communities of interest. Then the draft maps get drawn. So you actually have the first shot. And I'll talk at the end of this for those that want to try their hand at mapping, how the city has made available some tools that you can draw and propose your own maps before we start drawing anything as the consultants. So we got the hearing tomorrow night, and then a second one on the 27th. Now, because of the timing, in the interest of transparency, the state requires that all draft maps be posted on the city website 7 days before they're discussed by the council. So you have a chance to see the maps out there. The flip side of that is that means we need the maps in time to post them 7 days in advance. So the 28th, February 28th is really the deadline for drawing your initial draft maps that'll be considered from the beginning. You can still draw more maps later on, but they won't be considered at the first map hearing, which will happen March 12th. Then we come around for another hearing March 26th, and then final adoption. Really, the map will be chosen, according to the schedule, March 26th. And then the council has to do first reading and second reading, so second reading will be in April. Keep in mind these lines will be used in 2020. As hopefully you're aware that the census is April 1st. We'll get new data next year and actually get the chance to revise the lines in 2021 before the 2022 election. So the rules. How do we have to draw these lines? Well, first comes the federal laws on the left. We have to have an essentially equal population in each district. There's a little bit of plus or minus, but it's pretty tight. Plus or minus 5% of the target. Then we have to comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act, which really says no dividing up of a protected class, of a neighborhood that's heavily a protected class. Obviously, since our goal here is to draw a district that reflects the neighborhoods that are heavily protected class, we should be fine on that. But at the same time, no racial gerrymandering. So you saw the slide earlier with the city block by city block estimates of the Latino percentage. You've got the maps on your table. Use that to give you a sense of where the neighborhood is. We can't go and draw a line just based on the coloring in that. We're still focusing on the neighborhoods, which is why we're doing this hearing. So those are federal laws. Then the state has a brand new set of laws. If you talk to Cathedral City and those cities, they didn't have these. These are brand new as of January 1st. First of all, geographically contiguous. So each part of the district needs to touch the other parts of the district. Second, don't divide neighborhoods and communities of interest. You need to keep them together as much as you can within that equal population requirement. Third, we want easily identifiable boundaries. Try to use major roads, rivers, railroads, things like that that are easy for voters to understand. And then compact. You can't bypass one group of people in order to get to another group of people, is how the state law works. And if you have two maps that are essentially equal on all these criteria, then we can get into other factors like respecting voters' choices, essentially leaving re-election decisions up to the voters by trying to avoid pairing council members, and thinking about future population growth and things like that. That's not as much of a concern this time around because, as I mentioned, these lines will only be used in 2020. In 2021, we may want to take more consideration of how the population will shift over that decade. So those are the rules. There's a lot of data. I'm not going to go through all this data. But for every district that's drawn in a map and proposed, we will process that and we'll generate all this data. So if you want to know, obviously, your eligible voters, your citizen voting age percentages, you'll know from the data what percentage of each district is Latino. We'll also know education levels, age levels, household income, what percentage of the people in that district are renters versus homeowners. So all this kind of data will be provided. So if someone wants to draw a district and try to get all the renters together, they can look at the map and see how a given map does on that point, that kind of thing. So those are all, and don't worry, other than total population, these are all optional. If you don't want to go through all the data with a fine-tooth comb, there's no need to. And this is the map you saw earlier. Essentially, the yellows and reds are where the city blocks, the census estimates that a majority of the eligible voters are Latino in those blocks. So it's the very light greens, the yellows, and the reds. And no surprise, this is, I'm sure everyone's somewhat aware of this, the central downtown area is much more Latino, and that's why we're going through this process. And that's where the focus is to get one district that allows that neighborhood to have a voice. So the trick here is, this is unusual. There are a couple of school districts that do the same system, so this isn't the only one in the state. But it is a way to balance the two ideas. One is Get a district in the downtown central area. Give that area a voice where at least the allegation was they hadn't had a voice and been heard before. At the same time, districts, they have that advantage of giving small neighborhoods, small areas a voice. They also risk balkanizing a city. So if you have 5 districts, well then you have to be very careful that it doesn't end up being this district versus that district and versus that district and everyone fights. So that's the thinking behind this hybrid system where we'll achieve the goals of the California Voting Rights Act, we'll get a voice for the protected class that was bringing the allegation without creating that potentially balkanizing system in the rest of the city. So the goal in this process is to draw those 2 districts. Now the maps that you have focus on the central city because essentially we're drawing a central city district and then everything else goes into the other district. So it's a lot easier to just focus on the area where we need to draw the 1 seat and just know that everything else goes in. The only catch is that, remember that contiguity rule. So somehow the north and the south parts of the city need to be connected as we draw these maps. The central seat can't go all the way across the city. Sacramento sets these rules, and as you know, Sacramento does some fun things. So let me get to the heart of tonight's discussion. Communities of interest. It's a demographer's term. It's a weird term. It really means neighborhoods. It can also mean like industrial areas, commercial areas, areas that have shared interests at the city level. So what is a neighborhood? What is a community of interest? It's really whatever the residents who live in that area define as their neighborhood. It can be a school attendance area. That's a very common one. It can be an area around a park, an area between major roads. It could be an economic area. You often get areas that have a lot of Spanish speakers or other language speakers tend to self-identify. Or it could just be issue-driven. In Pasadena, we had a big issue with a neighborhood that had been working for years to shut down a liquor store that was a center of crime, and pulling a liquor license is like a 15-year process. And so the neighborhood had organized, and they defined their neighborhood as the residents who felt impacted by the crime coming out of that store and who had been working for years on that. So it can be whatever you identify as those issues, and that's why the city is doing this outreach, to hear from you. What do you think of, especially downtown in the central part of the city? What neighborhoods do you identify? And then we'll use those neighborhoods as building blocks to put them together into the downtown district. So you have the maps before you. I think your facilitators will go into more detail, but that is both why we're focused here. And we're not looking for people to debate and come to agreement on downtown stops at this street or downtown stops at that street. If 2 people have different opinions, we'd love to hear both of them. Because a lot of this all gets played out in that equal population requirement. It may be that we can put one area together and not the other one. So we're looking to get lots and lots of thoughts, brainstorming, not to have people debate and come to agreement on any final decisions. Do you want, I think that's it for me. Yeah, that's it for me. Do you want to talk about, give them a kickoff into their discussions?
Can you define the term community? Okay. So we are going to transition into our facilitated conversation. Again, the questions are here, and the facilitator will walk you through them. The first one, it's really an opportunity for you to, any questions that still remain, you have some time to write them on the Post-its and put them there. And then the second one, it's more of a brainstorm. Let's start thinking about what those communities of interest are, and the facilitators all have the definition that Doug used. And then the question number 3, you each have a map, and you'll be able to pinpoint and start identifying where those communities are. When you hear, there's a facilitator at each table. When you hear a timer going off, that just means it's a sign for the facilitator to transition into the next question.
I'd like to know, I know you have to take 2 things into account. The percentage of Latino population, majority minority, or closest you can get to it, but also the thing that roughly 10,000 population number. So I just wonder if I could get a figure. You're right. It's like you gotta go by Walgreens.
And the one that was
Okay.
thinking that was also and they try to tell you to stay.
Yep. That's crazy.
Okay, if I could have your attention, please. Doug and I are going to read the questions and go through and answer them as quickly as possible, because you can see we have a lot of questions and we'd like to be able to answer them for you tonight. Doug, I'll give the questions and we'll decide who answers it. What's with the cameras? No notice or explanation. The cameras, whatever cameras might be here, are not city cameras, so I cannot speak. I can't speak towards that. I believe that we've had some press here. Excuse me, if you could quiet down a little bit, that way everybody can hear the answers. Isn't it true that the city council wants 2 districts to hold on to their seats? We learned that most live in South Palm Desert. If you would please be quiet, everybody could hear the whole questions and we can get back to you. We learned that most live in South Palm Desert, so if the city went to 5 districts, some would have to move. The one thing that I can tell you is that during the entire time that we have been discussing this with the city council members, I have not once had a single council member ask the question, how would this impact me? How will I have to run against one of my constituents? None of them have actually asked a question relative to where they lived or where districts would be formed. I can't tell you what is in anybody's heart of hearts. I can tell you that I have not had that question, so I have not seen evidence that they are trying to go to 2 districts to protect themselves. How can residents trust that the 2-district system won't be abused? Let's say a progressive Latino is elected to to represent the donut hole, and then the other 4 can gang up against the one vote, always vote against any new ideas, thus making that person powerless. I believe that in a political system such as we have in America, you do see people regularly form alignments and to vote with or against others. I don't know that there is a distinction, that there is ganging up relative to particular districts, but Doug, you've seen the outcome of this?
Yeah, I would say we've seen districts work fantastic. I actually grew up in Santa Cruz, and Watsonville went to districts, and it was the greatest thing that ever happened, and it turned them into a powerhouse in the region. And I've seen cities where it went badly. The point here about 4 ganging up on 1 can happen in a 5-district system or in this system. And it's the flip side that you have to guard against when you go to district elections. So it's not unique to this system. It's a risk in any 5-district system as well. And we've seen it go wrong.
Why isn't the city letting residents talk at the meetings? It feels like the city is hiding tough questions or objections. There are oodles of opportunities to talk, and I would encourage everybody to talk. You have the opportunity to come to any one of 4 public hearings that will be held. Those will be held in the city council chamber. The first one is tomorrow night. Look for them on agendas. That is your opportunity to come speak on the subject. Our goal here was to provide as much information and to educate people regarding the process that they would be going through. We also have communication and dialogue going by answering questions as we're doing now. Why did the city wait to be sued The CVRA has been law for years. Why not, I'm sorry, sometimes I have a tough time with penmanship here. Okay, why not do the right thing so residents feel better represented? The city actually waited because we had received a letter from an attorney's firm indicating that they thought we were not compliant with the California Voting Rights Act. We received that about a year or so before suit was actually filed. During that period of time, we retained demographers to take a look at the statistics. We honestly didn't know if we were doing anything that was violating the California Voting Rights Act. What we were able to determine was that there's no conclusive case that could be made one way or the other. Doug, do you have any more information on, you were taking a look at that? We looked at case law, we looked at our districts, we looked at our demographics, the census data, and we were not able to establish conclusively one way or another whether or not there were any violations, and therefore we did not elect to go ahead and initiate a change. Why 2 districts instead of 5? We've talked about that a fair amount. The idea is we're trying to retain the bulk of the system under which Palm Desert has been successful and has progressed and become the vibrant, successful, economically stable city that it is today. At the same time, we want to respect everybody's rights to have a voice in government, and we need to do that by forming a 2nd district. That is why the settlement agreement called for the formation of 2 districts. Is the undeveloped land between Frank Sinatra Drive and the I-10 interstate within Palm Desert city limits? Yes, it is. Save for, the city limits actually stop at the railroad tracks and not at the I-10 itself, so it stops 200 feet short of the I-10. How does the creation of the district improve representation? The idea behind the California Voting Rights Act, what it requires is that any protected class, any minority class, have the opportunity to influence the outcome of elections, to be heard and to influence. It's no guarantee that somebody of the minority class will be elected either in their district or somebody, or where they are not the majority in a district. What it does do is set up a system under which everybody's voice can be heard. Their candidate of choice might not actually be a member of the same minority. Could be of a different minority, could be of a majority class. The idea is to make sure that they have the opportunity to influence the outcome of elections. What does the business community have in common with the minority district? I don't know.
I presume this is because it's kind of the downtown area. It's just proximity. It's geographic proximity. So part of the goal of these hearings is to hear from the residents in these areas, you know, what neighborhoods around downtown have connection, have shared interests, and which neighborhoods don't. So we can draw the district to follow what the residents in this area feel makes sense to go together and what doesn't. Sure. Okay. How is it fair to limit the so-called downtown district residents to vote for only 1 council member every 4 years when everyone else gets to vote for 4 candidates to represent their interests? This is the big question, right? You'd have the most say and the most seats if you stayed at large. Then everyone could vote on all 5. But the idea behind the Voting Rights Act, both the federal and the California acts, are that the idea that a neighborhood made up heavily of one protected class gets outvoted repeatedly. And so districts are the way to get around that, to give them one voice. As someone hinted at before, they still have to find a way to get 3 votes for their issues. You know, keep in mind, this is one of the things we always emphasize. This is not the county supervisors. City council members do not rule their districts like a king or queen like county supervisors tend to do. It still takes 3 votes to do anything. So this gets a voice on the council, but that voice has still got to find a way to get 2 more voices to vote for any issues. And that's true everywhere. Okay. Our census blocks roughly the same size and population. No. You can have, there are lots of census blocks that have nobody in them. They're just open space, you know, freeways, golf courses, waterways. And then there are blocks that will have an apartment building and will have 1,500 people in it. So no, they're not. The goal is to have them reflect city blocks. So in urban, nice, square city block areas, census blocks are just city blocks. It's when you get out into open space that they start to get a little weird. And I'll show you some of that later on. Why is the northeast corner of the park shown as 25 to 35% Latino when no one lives at the park? And similar question about Lincoln School. It's because you're looking at paper maps, and it's hard to see. I'm going to show you an interactive map where you can zoom in and really see the detail. And what often happens is it's the park plus the houses that back onto the park, or plus the houses that are one right next to it somehow or another that are actually getting counted. So yes, there may be 300 people in a park, and they all live in 2 apartment buildings, but you know, the data is not house by house, it's block by block. And some of those blocks have strange borders. And how are the number of council members proportionate to population per district? So this is the equal population rule. So a district that elects 1/5 of the council must have 1/5 of the city population in it. And the district that elects 4/5 of the council has to have 4/5 of the city's population in it. And there was a question that came up, are we talking about voters or total people? And it's total population as counted by the last census. So it is the equal number of people. It's not an equal number of voters. So one district has to have 4 times, in this case, the District 2 will have 4 times the population of District 1 because it elects 4 times the number of council members.
This is essentially the same thing.
Yeah. How is this not gerrymandering? Well, that's why we're here, to get your input on what are logical, reasonable borders for the districts, and not randomly gerrymandered lines. One trick is, I mentioned before, no racial gerrymandering. Race cannot be the predominant factor. You can't go block by block based on the colors on that map. We have to look at neighborhoods. Gerrymandering, so racial gerrymandering is a legal term. Gerrymandering is just a pejorative term. I would say a gerrymander is any map that the person speaking doesn't like. The goal is to draw a district that makes sense. You can't sue someone for a gerrymander. You can only sue them for a racial gerrymander. But you can, make your voice heard and get a map that makes sense.
I have a couple here that come. First, there's an easy one. Why is Bighorn not on the map? Palm Desert is long and narrow and hard to all fit onto one map. And for the size and geography, or the layout of the maps we have, Bighorn at the far southern tip did not fit on. It is not a majority-minority district.
On the bottom, I also asked about 92211.
I don't know the city by zip code areas. Is it the far north? Okay, both the far north and the far south, the same thing. None of them have majority-minority areas in them, and we're just at the extreme ends.
Yeah. Let me add to that too. When the draft maps come out, we put them both. You'll have a PDF version that shows the central detail because that's the main focus. They'll also go on an interactive website where, if you're comfortable with Google Maps, that's all this is plus and minus to zoom in. So you can zoom in and look anywhere in the city at the details and see all those details. With a piece of paper, you're limited, obviously, in what we can do.
We have 3 that are relatively similar. Who decided that it had to be 2 districts? Has it been decided on 2 districts, or can we vote for 5 districts? And will there be a discussion about having 5 districts, or is 2 districts assumed? 2 districts was proposed in the settlement. Both the city, as represented by the city council, your elected officials, and the plaintiffs agreed to a 2-district solution. The settlement is based upon the assumption that it will be 2 districts. You are entitled to submit and to propose whatever districts you would choose, including a 5-district solution. The city can. agree to it. You, if the question was who proposed, the city council proposed a two-district solution.
Yes.
Yes, it could be, yes.
By the council.
Okay, we do have a number of questions regarding ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting we have not talked about a lot. The key to remember is that ranked choice voting is easy for the voter. You vote for your first choice candidate, your second choice candidate, and your third choice candidate. There are some complexities in how the votes are actually counted. We will be talking more about that in future, and I'd like to defer that. Apparently, we have some handouts that are available to you as you exit. David is waving them furiously to get my attention, so those will be available for you to take a look at advance. We're also working on making a videotape for YouTube, our YouTube-friendly videotape that will explain how the votes are counted. The good thing to remember is it is easy for the voters.
Oh, what is a population unit? This one came up a couple times. So on the yellow map, you see the little black dashed units. Population units they're not official. They're not legally binding in any way. NDC creates these in an effort to create tools that residents can easily use to draw and propose maps. So what you'll see in the tools I'm going to show you is we give you the population data for each of those little population units. Essentially, if we gave you the total population for every census block, it would take hours and no one would be able to accurately add up 300 different numbers and get at the exact number. So the population units are designed to be flexible enough that you can draw the district you want while not being overwhelming in how many numbers you have to add up if you want to add them up. So they're just a mapping tool. They're not binding. If you don't like where the dash lines go, split it. As long as you follow a road that is you'll be following a census block and we can subdivide it. So they're not binding. They're simply a tool to help make it easier to draw maps.
Just a facilitator's timekeeping, we have like 1 more minute and we still have a lot of questions. And for transparency, I did move one here that it's about ranked choice voting because that one was just answered. So don't think that I'm taking questions unanswered.
Willing to talk more quickly or find a different way to answer your questions. Obviously, those of you who are interested in having your question tonight can stick around a little bit later. Some of these are statements. Low-income housing is not readily available. I would certainly agree with that. Why do we need 5 council members for 2 districts? I actually saw this one earlier and checked in with the city attorney, and we believe that we've never seen a city with fewer than 5 council members. We're not sure if state law establishes that, or do you?
It is. You'd have to be a charter city to have fewer than 5 council members. There are school districts with only 3 board members, but they're really small.
Why not 3 districts, north, central, and south? Again, the settlement, the terms of the settlement call for 2 districts. That's what we're focusing on, but you're entitled to propose different solutions if you would like them to be considered. How much did the city settle for? If that's a question as to dollar amounts, we will play, as I understand, we pay the plaintiff's attorney's costs, but there are no other no settlement monies otherwise paid directly to the plaintiffs. We've agreed to spend up to $350,000 implementing the ranked choice vote. Population of California citizens versus snowbirds.
I can answer that. So this is, hopefully this is actually, let me do a PSA. Hopefully you're aware, April 1st is Census Day. So hopefully you're all aware and you're ready for those mailers and you're eager to fill them out quickly and turn them in. On the PSA side, California, between the state, the county, the cities, and local organizations, gets $2,000 per year for every person counted. So if you're not counted, this area is losing $2,000. So the trick is April 1st. And the census arrived on that as neutral a day as you could find. I do a lot of work in Arizona, and they all want that count March 15th with all the baseball people in town. But then I tell them it could be August 15th and no one would be in town. So April 1st is kind of the best day the Bureau has found to do that as a neutral day. So it is, where are you residing on April 1st? Can a candidate living in District 1 run at large in District 2? No. So each district does act as a district, and so you have to be a candidate in that, you have to reside in that district, and only the people who reside in that district can vote for the representative from that district. Okay. This percentage of permanent population versus snowbirds, we don't know. We just have the data for April 1st of 2010, soon to be April 1st of 2020.
If I can, one of the questions, how can one district go against another district? My experience and my communications with my counterparts, city managers in other cities across the state who've gone through the districting process and who've ended up with geographically limited areas, they all attest to one district fighting against another or competing with a number for the same limited funds. In other words, if one district gets $1 million to go towards resurfacing streets in their area, another district says, wait a minute, if they get $1 million and I get $1 million, I want $1 million to go for the library that I would like built in my district. And somebody else says, and then I need $1 million to go for an animal shelter. And so they do, any city by its very nature has limited financial resources. The experience that I learned from my colleagues is that it does reduce itself to competition, one against another, for the same resources, and it becomes much more difficult to do large, meaningful projects. You will never, according to them, they say they have difficulties doing a $10 million project because they don't have $50 million to spread all around the city, and they can't get their colleagues, one council member can't get their colleagues to support the $10 million district in their project. As Doug was indicated earlier, it sounds as though some cities with districting are successful and have it work well for them. The outcome remains to be seen. Plaintiffs are asking for 5 districts. Says agreement was just to start the process. The city says they agreed to this in December. I'm not sure if the city, yes, did agree to 2 districts as part of the settlement agreement in December, and the plaintiffs did agree to it at the same time. I can't speak for what they're asking for or not, or what they were, if they were intending to do something other than was agreed to. What is the city's total population?
Oh.
To the nearest one.
So according to the 2010 census, which is the number that drives how many people per district, the city's population is 48,445. So we know it's obviously grown since then, but that's the number. So the central kind of downtown district needs 1/5 of that, about just under 10,000 people into that district. Why did you set up 2 districts that seems to make the donut hole district a ghetto? That would be true with 5 districts too. You know, you would have, hold on. You would have one district isolated in the central area, whether you have one and a multi-member district or a 5-district system. It's called out because that's how you settle the California Voting Rights Act. That's how you address the goals of the California Voting Rights Act, is to create a district for the area that is alleging a lack of representation. So, are we limited to just 1 member from 1 district and 4 from the 2nd district, or can we still propose 2 and 3 if we have increased the size of the donut hole? Not under the settlement. So the settlement agreement calls for a single member downtown district and then a 4-member outside district. Keep in mind, if you made the central district twice as big in order to have 2 council members, you would then be diluting the voting strength of the Latinos in that central district by putting in golf clubs and other areas that are outside of the central area. And that's why it's the size it is.
And going back to the question about creation of a ghetto, I think one of the things that the city council was very cognizant of was that this central downtown district contains a number of the gems of the city. Depending on where the boundaries are drawn, Civic Center Park, the Aquatic Center, the McCallum Theater, the College of the Desert, what we're doing, the $8 million we're currently putting into renovating and making San Pablo the heart of the city. All of this speaks towards a richness that would never be classified as a ghetto. The boundaries could or could not include, as I understand, could or could not include El Paseo. Again, not something that you would typically see in what would be a ghetto setting. So I don't think it's a fair characterization to say by any extent that the center of the city.
Let's keep. Everyone
I would- You-
Let's respect everyone, please.
All your facilities that you
Can-
just mentioned do not house people. Let's just be clear on that.
You're correct.
House people.
You're correct. They are assets to the entire community. They are not housing. More snowbirds questions. I'm going to set aside some of the ones that I think that we've addressed. Some of these. That was the one district, not gerrymandering. I believe that we've addressed that as well. Can NDC data be posted on the city website since it was on the PowerPoint but not discussed?
Yes, so the mapping tools that we'll present actually give you the data in very usable forms. If somebody does have their own GIS mapping, the data is public data. We're happy to send it to whoever wants it. So yes, all of our data is completely transparent and available. This is a question. 0 to 25% is mapped as a majority of the city. This is on the demographic maps that you have on your tables, the purple areas. Obviously, most of the city is purple. The same thing, asking, can we see data for breakdowns within the 0 to 25? And yes, the data is available. One of the tools we'll give you is just an Excel spreadsheet. So anyone that's comfortable with Excel can look at it, population unit by population unit, and the data census block by census block is available for anyone that has GIS mapping software. So. How do you determine the population in each neighborhood? That's what those little population units are for. There's actually a PDF that'll be, I think, available tomorrow, and it's already on the city's website that you can download that will show you the numbers for each of those population units. And if you're comfortable with Excel, there's an Excel spreadsheet that goes with it. And why have these meetings if we already know the downtown district will be gerrymandered around the Latino people? This comes up a lot. So allegations under the California Voting Rights Act of a violation are race-driven. The remedy to that is not. So we're focused on the downtown because that's where the neighborhoods are that are heavily Latino. That's where the California Voting Rights Act is related. But now we switch not to pick out which blocks are red, yellow, and green. The reason for this meeting is to pick out the neighborhoods downtown and to put them together in a way that makes sense. And any way we do that is going to empower the Latino voters who live downtown to have a stronger voice. But now we transition from CVRA allegations that are race-based to drawing maps that are neighborhood-based, and that's why we're doing these forums.
Does redistricting change when city council members are up for re-election? And when are they up for re-election? It does not change when they are up for, the proposal that we have would not change when they were up for re-election. The districting would be in place in time for the 2020 election. In 2020, we will have 3 council members up. That will be Kathleen Kelly, the mayor pro tem, Mayor Gina Nestandi, and Council Member Susan Marie Weber. 2 years later, the remaining 2 council members would be up for re-election, should they choose to run again, and that would be Sabby Jonathan and Jan Harnick. This one, in the interest of transparency, I'm reading all of these, even if some of them have been asked before, just so that you know that we're not skipping over anything. Some of them I don't know if I can answer. When the owners of property are white and they rent to only Latinos, does that interfere with the blocking out of the voting areas? I'm not sure I understand that.
Yeah. So the demographics of voting is based on who lives there. It's not based on who owns the property. So if you live there, you're counted by the census. If you are a registered voter there, you get to vote in the election. So homeowners who don't live in the district can't vote in the district.
Why, excuse me, why Latino population is left behind? I don't completely understand that, or the leaving behind. Why are we doing a 2-district with potential for another lawsuit for not going with 5? The 2-district solution was a settlement, as was pointed out, originally proposed by the City Council and agreed to by the plaintiffs, because the City Council believes that it best represents what has made Palm Desert strong and successful in the past, while respecting the rights and the interests of all parties within the city. Also, it technically and in spirit complies with the requirements of the CVRA. Therefore, we don't believe that there will be a sustainable case or charge by somebody who challenged and wanted to force the city to move to 5 districts. As I always tell people, this is America. Anybody can sue anybody for anything. So there is never a guarantee that we won't be sued. The idea is to minimize the exposure to suits that would have merit and strong foundation.
Let's see what else we got here. Residents in District 1 can't vote for council members in the at-large. Well, this is the tricky wording, is that it's not an at-large district. It's 2 districts. So you only get to vote for the council members from your district. Any chance that council members would consider 5 districts? Yes, that's the point earlier. And I should clarify, the council can change it and decide to go to 5. Down the road, also a ballot measure, a resident ballot measure could change in how it's set up. Is the agreement legal? Does it represent the spirit of the law? As we've talked about, yes, it brings the representation and the district to the area that alleged not having it, and it was signed off on by the court. So yes, it's legal. Maps. How is population size distributed across the cities and through seasons based on income and based on points of education? Across this, I assume this is back to the April 1st issue, I think, where the count is the population as of April 1st of every year ending in 0. Obviously, there's no rules for income or education. That just plays out through where people choose to live and where they have the opportunity to choose to live.
I was going to grab your Dr. Pepper and try talking into that. The CVRA was passed in 2002. Why did it take 18 years for our city council to address? It's non-compliance with CVRA, and only after lawsuit was initiated. I think it's fair to say that Palm Desert, like most other cities in the state, was not tracking or following the CVRA for a number of years until a couple of attorneys started actively pursuing it around the state. Was not on our radar.
Just on a timing front, until 2016, cities could not switch by vote of the council. They had to put it to the voters. And the voters were repeatedly voting it down, which then led to a lawsuit. Because when the voters voted it down, it was polarized, and that, even where there wasn't polarized voting, that generated the evidence of a violation. So Visalia put it on the ballot, voted down, sued because of that vote. So in 2016, the law changed, and it gave small cities the ability to change by council vote. So of those 126, about 120 of them are since 2016. So it's not that this really played around. Really, cities couldn't do it unless they were sued until 2016, 2017. So it's not that they ignored it for all that time. It's really just the last 2 years. And I should say, not the last 2 years that they ignored it. It's only been an issue that they could act on for the last 2 years, and you see the timeline. They were pretty fast.
Did the council consider more than 2 districts? If so, what were any positives more than 2 districts that were discussed, and what were those positives? When the supervisors filed, and actually even before that, when we were first put on notice that this was an issue, there was a lot of discussion about 5 districts and what it would do to the city. I'm trying to think of what the positives would have been. Obviously, it would have resulted in greater geographic dispersion of council members and elected officials. It is true that we do currently have the majority of the council members either living in the center of the city, ostensibly in the downtown district area, and in the south part of the city, where I believe historically most of the elected officials have lived. However, they've also lived in the far north of the city, and we have an example of that right here. So there is some dispersion, but it is not great. If a geographic dispersion of city council members would be considered a positive, then that would have been one of the positives. And that is all that comes to mind from those conversations, to my recollection.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but are those only options 2 or 5? There isn't like 3 or 4?
I believe in other cities, if they have a different dispersion of protected class and minorities, then they would be suitable for other solutions. In Palm Desert, we really just have a concentration of protected class Latinos in one portion of the city, in the center portion of the city. So we would not have been able to achieve the objectives of the CVRA by 3 or 4 districts that I could envision. Going downhill. How is it conducive to imply issues or struggles will bind districts when it is stated that districts are divisive? Issues or struggles will bind. Absolutely.
My question was, if we keep hearing that the councils are having 2 different districts, will then have people outvoting each other? How is it that we're supposed to come together and draw these boundaries for communities based on what binds them, while we keep hearing at this meeting that districts are just going to divide our city? I'm confused as to which side we're going to listen to during the same presentation. So can you explain how you're giving us both sides and how they congeal with moving forward?
It is the belief of the city council and those that were involved in the settlement that all of the city would bind together, all the elected officials, all 5 of them would bind together in an attempt to protect and to develop and to promote the downtown district. We've been working that direction since 2013, when a new strategic plan was passed that was adopted that included a vision for developing a heart of the city. The assertion at that time and the belief was there is no downtown, there's no there. If you have to talk to somebody and say, let's meet downtown for a cup of coffee, we didn't know where downtown was. They wanted to develop a heart and a core. So since 2013, we have been working towards developing a downtown district that will be an asset to the entire community. We continue to believe that there will be an investment of interest, capital, resources, and reserves to develop, as you can see is going on San Pablo Avenue, and is planned for El Paseo, and is planned for areas around the north area of the Civic Center. These are all projects that will have be of interest to the entire community, all 5 council members, because they are a long-term goal that we have been reaching to achieve. So it was the belief that having 2 districts would continue to bind everybody working on a common interest and a common vision for the downtown.
Okay, I'm just doing my job as a facilitator, so I'm going to interrupt. We are supposed to finish by 7:30. There's still quite a few questions up here. My recommendation is that Doug does have a 15-minute demo that's very important about how, if any of you want to draw a map and submit it, I think you want to watch and be here for his presentation and learn about the tools that will allow you to draw those maps. So my recommendation is that we move that, and then if you have any questions or your questions were not answered, Lori can maybe answer them separately. Just because I want to get us, want to get us out of here on time.
Okay. Let me jump in, my high-tech projector system. There we go. So there are two steps to this process. One is identifying the communities of interest in the neighborhoods downtown and in the central region. And the idea is we use those as building blocks to develop a district that makes sense. The next is actually drawing that district. And one of the things that the City Council has done was to ask NDC to provide these tools that we use that really empowers it. I always love this because it lets people get into the kind of guts of this process. You don't have to just weigh in yes or no on what maps you like or don't like. You can actually draw a map. So one thing to emphasize, these are optional empowerment tools. You don't have to use these. This is all about engaging the community and trying to make things easier, but there's no requirement that you do anything. You can just weigh in yes or no on which draft maps you like once they're released. And there are a couple of steps to this. First of all, there's a paper map. It's actually very similar to the yellow map that you have in front of you, except that each population unit has a population number on it. And I will show that in a minute. For those that just want to deal with paper and sketch something out, that works great. There's an Excel sheet for those that want to see more demographics. And then there's an online tool, which is tricky to use because it's powerful, but it really gives you city block by city block control of the process. So first of all, we have this public participation map. It's the map you're looking at, but with numbers on it. You can see, here's a population unit with 0 people in it. Here's a population unit with 383 people in it. And this is a PDF on the city website. We can have it at the hearing tomorrow. And all you do is start wherever you want to start and add together these little population units until you get to the target, which is between 9,205 and 10,173. That's the range the district has to be in for the central district. And then the second district is everything else. So if you want to focus on the outside district, think of it as your areas you're taking out of the outside district, but it's probably easiest to try to draw the central one. The one catch that's mentioned here is that under state law, the north districts have to be contiguous. So somehow the north district needs to touch this, the north part of the district needs to touch the south part of the district. So it has to come around one side or the other of this. And as I mentioned before, these population units are created for ease of line drawing. They're not restrictive. So some of them, and they follow streets. So some of them are funny shaped because the streets are funny. If you want to divide a population unit, go ahead and divide it. Draw it on your piece of paper, and when we put it in the computers, we have that block by block control, so we can divide it for you. So you can just, again, really easy, you just add up the numbers until you get in that population range, then you're done. Either turn it in at City Hall, or what's more and more popular is people just take their cameras, take a picture of their map, and email it in. There's an email address right here. Makes it really easy to send it in. So that's the really simple one. Just piece of paper, pencil, probably a calculator, and that's all you need. There's a second map on the website, and it's on the website because it works with an Excel file. If you're comfortable with Excel, and we always say don't try to learn Excel for this, but if you're comfortable with Excel, and more people are, this will work with you. On the map, instead of population counts, it has ID numbers, just 1 to whatever it is, 1 to 82 or 83. Then in the Excel file is a worksheet that has those same population units and all the numbers for it. And in the yellow area, you just enter in, I want this in District 1, I want this, the population units you want in District 1, you just put a 1 there. The second sheet that's behind it will automatically do all the math for you. So if you're comfortable with Excel, this will do the math for you, and it will give you ethnic numbers. It'll give you the total population, the citizen voting age population, and those numbers, so you can know how Latino that central seat is as you draw it. Well, yeah, so this is on the website. Again, both the PDF map with the ID numbers and the Excel file are already on the city's website. So those are the two easy approaches. Oh yeah, I even had handy little arrows. Okay. So the third approach, so those are all, that data is all population unit by population unit. If you want to really fine-tune control your maps, the next step, it gets into the online mapping tool, which is also a link on the, I think it's representpd.org website, which is linked from the city website. If you go to this, it takes a little bit of time. What we found is about half the people that try this get frustrated, give up, and go back to the PDF. About the other half, though, once you figure it out, they love it. Almost no one draws one map. You either draw no maps, or people get into it and draw 2 or 3 or 4. Also, the folks that write the software, they're upgrading it. There's this little box right here that says EN. This is the first jurisdiction. We've used this tool maybe 50 times. This is the first time they've ever had it available in Spanish. So EN is for English. You click on that little pull down, and ES for Espanol. You can switch it to Spanish. There's also Vietnamese and Mandarin if you want to use it in those languages. But the other thing they've added is tips. So first you create your user ID, you log in, then go to tips. And that will walk you screen section by screen section around this screen and tell you what everything does. They just added that in because people found this way too hard to figure out. Let me see. Oh, oops, went too far. So the main thing is, over here you have your target. You're going to tell it, I want to put these areas in District 1. Then you use, you can either click census block by census block, or you can draw a shape around the area and put it in. And it will tell you the population you've chosen. It will tell you the resulting population as you draw this, and I'll show this all to you in just a second. But the key things are, use the tips. They'll walk you through the screen very simply. It takes about 90 seconds, and it'll introduce you to the whole thing. You use your target, how you want to select them. Down here, theme, one of my least favorite demographer terms of all time. Theme is what's shown as colors on the map. So that if you click on that pull down, one of the options is district ID. It'll just show your district colored in. That's also Latino population. So those of you that are asking about the details of that big citywide map you have, if you click Latino CVAP, and it will color this map in with those same colors, and you can zoom in. Speaking of zooming in, plus, minus, your usual little hand tools, things that hopefully are familiar to you. When you finish your map, there's 2 things you have to do. One is, under plan integrity, you can check to see that's contiguous. It'll check and make sure that it's contiguous. And then you submit your plan. And here's one key thing I'll mention. When you hit submit plan, it will ask for your name, and then there's a box that says explain, it's your opportunity to explain your map. So it's limited in how many characters you can put in, but that's your opportunity to say why you think your map makes sense. And that goes to the council and gets posted for everyone else to see. So we definitely recommend doing that. None of it's required. The only thing that's required is an email address to log in. But this gives you city block by city block control, and I know we're running a little bit late, but let me see if I can show you just very quickly how this works. Oh, my Wi-Fi has died. Because we're running late, my Wi-Fi's dead. We don't have Wi-Fi here. But play around with it. Sorry, we had to use a little MiFi device, and apparently the battery has died, so I've lost my internet access. But essentially, that's it. You just click. Now, where it gets frustrating is as you zoom in, you have to pick block by block, or you draw a little, they call it a lasso, you lasso areas. It gets tricky. You can unselect areas as you go through it. But the whole thing is this gives you block by block control. And as I mentioned, about half the people understandably get frustrated. I would say this program was mainly written in 2009 for the 2011 redistricting. It's only been kind of slightly adjusted. They'll update it when it makes financial sense, which is next year for them. But try it out. It lets you have very fine-tuned control. And if it's too frustrating, just go back to the paper map. Or I would say, we'll take a napkin. Anything you want to draw a map on and send in. If you want to grab a city map and draw your proposed districts, we'll still run the numbers on it. What these tools let you do is get population balanced. So we take a couple questions, and then we'll break and just maybe 2 questions, and then I'll stick around one-on-one. So I think you were first. So.
You said this is on, some of this is on the city website. Is it obvious, or do you have a URL for the page?
Well, you're actually sitting with the webmaster for the Represent PD site, so let me have her answer.
If you go to www.representpd.org, there's a link to both the paper PDF map that you can take a photo of, to the Excel kit, and also to this online mapping tool with instructions. We have all that content, Spanish and English, on the website. Representpd.org.
Yeah, and let me add too that map that I talked about. Unfortunately, my Wi-Fi's gone, but you'll also be able to use, all the maps that come in will be posted to this map, as I mentioned, where you can zoom in and out and see the details without having to go through this complicated tool. Yes?
Yeah, so looking at this map, the largest concentration of Latinx residents would be in the area starting up north at Joni Drive and down towards 111. So if you try to draw the district to encompass those concentrations, are you going to exceed the 1/5 of population that can sit in that particular district, thus breaking up the 2 Latinx concentrations?
Yes, and you'll violate contiguity. So those are the rules set by Sacramento and the federal government. So we have to follow federal law, and we have to follow state law in how it's drawn. Okay, so I'm happy to answer questions one-on-one, but let me allow some wrap-up here.
Okay, so thank you. Just a few things to wrap up. At your table, you have a few things. You have a timeline of when the public meetings are going to be. That's behind the agenda. Tomorrow's the first public hearing. And you also have a survey. We would really appreciate to hear your feedback so that we can see, how else we can improve or what we need to respond to. So if you can complete the survey before you leave. If your questions were not answered, either Lori or Doug will take them individually, just because we want to make sure that if people have to go, they can. And we will be collecting all of those yellow maps. So if you made notes and then on your table identified communities of interest, all of that is going to start informing. Again, we're not drawing maps right now, but start informing Doug as he will be preparing maps. And finally, you all have a chance to submit a map. So that is it. Thank you.
As the plaintiff, can I have the floor?
Talk to people if they want to talk to you. Okay, so Karina Isabel Quintanilla is here. If anybody has, and Lorraine, if anybody has a question directly for them, they're there. But we really need to wrap up. I apologize, we're running like very late at 7:41. But thank you, everybody.